Welcome back to the Sports Fan on 970 WATH. Alongside Darayus Sethna, I'm Sedric Granger, and we're about to jump into a little bit of NBA. Yes, the Cleveland Cavaliers, 26-15, now up to fourth place in the Eastern Conference. And Darayus, they are streaking. They have won, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, but 8 in a row, and they look to keep that going against a Bucks team that's starting to reel after firing their head coach and hiring Doc Rivers. It's really a new era for this Bucks team, and the Cavs have a chance to start it off on the wrong foot for that Milwaukee Bucks squad.
You know, it's crazy to me, Cedric. The Bucks are 30-13. That's their overall record, and people are talking about they're reeling. Like, they're second place in the Eastern Conference. You know, I know that the head coaching didn't work out. That's a totally different topic for another day, but in terms of the Cavs, Sedric, man, I was going to say Sam Merrill, he has been unbelievable for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. I have, the last couple of years now, when I'm not a journalist, when I don't have my journalism hat on, Sedric, I've got my Cleveland Cavaliers fan hat on.
You got a Cleveland Cavaliers shirt on right now.
I have a Cleveland Cavaliers shirt on. I have at least 4 different Cleveland Cavaliers hats, jerseys, you name it, I've got it.
Bleeds the white and gold.
Oh, of course. You should see my apartment. It's covered in Cavs posters. But with Sam Merrill, Cedric, I have been on it for years that the Cavs need a consistent three-point shooter, and he has given that for him. 8 3-pointers against the Magic this past Monday, 26 points, and then 18 points this past weekend against the Hawks. And you don't need Sam Merrill to be that 20-point guy. I mean, most of his points, 15, 6, 18, 11, 16. If you can get somewhere in that 11 to 16 range with Sam Merrill off the bench, that is massive, because now what that does is that takes less pressure off Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell to really have to carry this team from the guard perspective. But you also can't help but talk about Donovan Mitchell and this tear that he has been on, averaging 28 points a game. Cedric, it seemed like once Darius Garland got hurt with that jaw injury back in December, Donovan Mitchell has just taken his game to the next level. When I pull up his stats now, Cedric, especially in this last month, I'll just start in the new year with what he's done, and I'll list all the point totals. 26, 22, 26, 17, 45, which was the game in Paris, 34, 31, 18, and 25. I mean, come on. I mean, the 2024 might be the year of Donovan Mitchell. I mean, my goodness, he's been fantastic. He's been that elite scorer that the Cavs have needed him to be. My big question with the Cavs, Cedric, is how do you implement Darius Garland and Evan Mobley when they get back? Because when Garland got hurt back in December against Boston, they were 13-11 heading into that game on December 14th. And now their record, I'm pulling it up here, overall.
26-15.
Yep, 20. That's right, 26-15. I'm really interested to see how JB Bickerstaff makes that adjustment. And you also got to think about Jared Allen too, right? Jared Allen has had a pretty solid year in 2023-24, shooting .60. He's always one of the league leaders in field goal percentage, but he's averaging 15 points a game, 10 rebounds, which is what they need him to do. And how about this? 3 assists too a game for Jared Allen. I think this is probably the best I've seen him play in a Cavs uniform in terms of from season to season. But it's going to be interesting because it's Garland and Mobley are 2 guys who need to score to be successful. And with Darius Garland, he's not going to be, since Donovan Mitchell has come, he's not going to be that number 1 scorer. And I think he thrived in that number 1 scorer role a couple years ago when the Cavs made that play-in game against Atlanta. Like, he was the guy, and you really saw Evan Mobley have an unbelievable rookie year, and that's because he was probably the second option on that team. Now Donovan Mitchell comes in, everybody kind of goes down a peg. So I'm really interested to see how Bickerstaff makes that adjustment again when those 2 come back. And last point I want to make about the Cavs that's really important to me, Cedric. When you think of X factors, I want to ask you this question first before I give you my answer. When you think of a playoff series that the Cavs are going to have, whether it's between New York. I mean, at
especially
this point,
the Knicks. It's been a problem.
And
Celtics maybe.
Yeah,
as well.
and I think about the Knicks a lot too because that was the playoff matchup they had last season. Don't even get me started about that playoff matchup. But when you think about X factors on the Cavs, who would you think are like the two most anybody? And this can be anybody on the team. The two most important guys.
Yeah, of course, Donovan Mitchell is one guy always comes to mind, and then again, Jared Allen. You got to have front court and the back court
for
presence.
Sure. And here's my answer to that, and it might be a little crazy, but I'm gonna go with Karis LeVert and Isaac Okoro are my two X factors. Now, hear me out on this.
All right, what you got here?
I'm expecting Donovan Mitchell to get 30.
So you're almost using it as a constant.
I'm using it as a constant. I expect Darius Garland to get 20 and 10. I expect Jared Allen to get 11 rebounds a game. I don't know what to expect from Evan Mobley half the time. Like, seriously. The inconsistency for Mobley has been a little frustrating at times. And I look at body language, too, a lot in these NBA games, Sedric. And there's a big difference in Evan Mobley's body language from year 1 to now to year 3. It's somewhat concerning. I'm not saying the guy can't play. None of that. He's a big piece to this team. But he got straight up bullied by Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson in the playoffs last season. Number 3 overall pick. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay,
it's inexcusable.
It's inexcusable. So, but the three constants, at least with Mitchell, Garland, Allen, totally agree with you on that, Sedric, for sure. Yeah. The reason I bring up LeVert is because the Cavs are going to need some scoring off the bench. It's going to come down to that bench because New York's gotten better. I'm comparing this team to New York just because that's the team they played in the first round last year. And this Knicks team is much better than that Knicks team from last season, especially after the OG Anunoby trade.
And it's still likely that that's a first or second round playoff
Exactly.
matchup.
So if you bring in a guy like Karis LeVert, if he can give you 13 to 15 points off the bench, and consistently, game by game, too many times I've seen Karis LeVert have a game where he drops like 30 points one night, and then the next night he drops like 4. Yeah, I mean, come on. That can't happen in a playoff series. And to me, specifically, the three-point shooting of Isaac Okoro might be, seriously, Sedric, one of the most, if not the most, important aspect for the Cavs if they want to be successful.
Yeah, we've seen how that's made the difference in games before all throughout last year.
Exactly, and this has been Isaac Okoro's best season in terms of three-point shooting. When I bring up the stats, Sedric, he's shooting 36% from 3. Right? I mean, in the past it was, high 20s, low 30s. You can definitely tell he's been working on that shot. But teams are still going to leave him open, especially when Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are on the floor. They're going to leave you in that corner spot. When they dish it out to you in the corner, you've got to knock those down. And in that playoff series last year, totally ineffective. It was like 4-on-5 basketball every time Isaac Okoro was out on the court. So this might just be me being a very in-depth Cavs fan, Sedric. But to me, Karis LeVert and Isaac Okoro, if they don't have good games, I think it's a huge detriment to the Cavs. Now, of course, Donovan Mitchell can go out there and drop 50, and that solves a lot of your problems.
But then it doesn't make it a constant anymore.
But it doesn't make it a constant. And is Donovan Mitchell going to score 50 in a playoff game against teams with defenses like the Knicks, the Sixers, the Celtics? Probably not. So that's my overall thought process on the Cavs so far. Really like what I'm seeing on this current winning streak. I think the biggest challenge this team is going to face for the near future, as I mentioned earlier, is how J.B. Bickerstaff is going to implement Garland and Mobley once they get back in the lineup. And now you have to find a replacement for Tristan Thompson too, because that he's got some off the court nonsense going on.
Yeah, if you didn't get to see, suspend it for 25 games. That was as of yesterday, so that is a very tough loss for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think one question from everything that you broke down, also fantastic breakdown, by the way, Darayus. I always love hearing your takes on the Cleveland Cavaliers. But with there almost being too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes when it comes to the guard position, and for Bickerstaff, the challenge is trying to make sure all of his guys can get their numbers, can be able to get their minutes, and keep team satisfaction at a good level and everybody playing in the best position that they can. Do you feel that the Cavs could utilize a trade to get stronger in a different position and be able to alleviate maybe having too many cooks in the kitchen?
I'm not going to lie, Cedric. I don't think the Cavs need to make any big trades right now. I think they stood pat at the trade deadline last year. I think they can stand pat again this year. I think there's too much, like you said, there's too much scoring. So they don't really need another scorer. And if you have guys like Sam Merrill and Dean Wade, who's also been a quality three-point shooter for this Cavs team, if they can keep it up, then I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got at the shooting, plus Mitchell and Garland, of course. I think if anything, what I do think the Cavs could use is obviously I think a backup center to replace Tristan Thompson. Can you get maybe a guy on a veteran minimum, whether you sign him before the playoffs, just to have that leadership type role, right? I think if you get like a Udonis Haslem,
I was thinking that in my head.
If Udonis Haslem comes to Cleveland, wouldn't that be great? But it doesn't have to be him, obviously. He's retired, but someone who's had experience. I remember in 2015, right? It was Kendrick Perkins who was on that Cavs team. Mike Miller, one of LeBron's old teammates in Miami. So I think if the Cavs can get someone like that, because Tristan Thompson was that played that role for the Cavs, and now with him being suspended, I think this Cavs team is so young that they do need a guy outside of Bickerstaff to be that that adult in the room per se. But from a schematic standpoint, from a roster standpoint, and the talent that they already have, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some teams, though, that really tried to get themselves in better shape, and that's why we've seen some teams already be active. So
yeah,
going through the NBA trade tracker, of course, one thing that I noticed as a guy that likes to follow the Hornets as well as the Cavaliers, the Hornets, they gave Terry Rozier, traded him off to the Miami Heat in exchange for Kyle Lowry, as well as a 2027 first-round pick. So interesting move here for Terry Rozier. You almost feel like he got freed, now getting to go to a team that is contending for a championship. And then for Kyle Lowry, he's a guy that's had so many great experiences, of course, most known for his time with the Raptors.
Yes.
And, of course, winning a championship over there, too. And then now the Hornets have Kyle Lowry to join that backcourt with LaMelo Ball. So that should be pretty exciting for the Hornets and something they can build upon. But mainly the main idea here is Terry Rozier on the Heat.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at this Heat roster, you already have 3 20-point scorers. Tyler Hero's having a career year. Bam Adebayo, who's one of the most versatile big, if not the most versatile big man in the entire NBA. And then, of course, Jimmy Buckets, right? And then how about Jaime Jaquez Jr.? Gotta be, I think he's my rookie of the year right now, to be honest with you. I just think the consistency that he's brought with a team that has, a trio of elite scorers. And I'm really excited to see how Terry Rozier fits in. He might come off the bench with Duncan Robinson. That could be a possibility, because if you have 3 guards with Butler, or 2 guards with Butler and Hero already in your starting lineup, I think Terry Rozier could really bring the punch off the bench. And that Heat culture, that's something else, Cedric. We all know this. So I think if he's asked to come off the bench, is Terry Rozier, I definitely think he would do it for the sake of the team. And then don't forget about Caleb Martin, too. This was a guy in that 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals last year against the Celtics. I was making the argument that he could have been the Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He just took the Celtics apart. So Heat are going to be the Heat are the one team I don't worry about their playoff positioning, because they've proven that they can beat anyone, whether they have home court advantage or not in a series. So
yeah. They've done it as an AFC to get all the way to the finals. And there's also a coaching staff, very experienced, of course, Eric Spoelstra, who has been leading the Heat for a very long time.
Exactly.
One of the longest tenured coaches in all of the NBA. And he's a coach that can really deal with a lot of different personnel, a lot of different scorers and star power. You saw with, of course, the Heat Big Three with Bosh, Wade, and LeBron. And now you have so much talent that you're trying to organize. That's something that always impresses me so much about NBA coaching and just basketball coaching in general, is managing the minutes, making sure that everybody can be satisfied, what kind of combinations of players really work out well, which combinations of players don't work well.
Exactly.
And I'm very confident that Spoelstra is going to find the perfect plan. And I mean, they wouldn't have made this trade if they didn't already have a plan in place for what Rozier could do.
Right, and this trade it just makes them better in every single way. So definitely Heat won this trade. I mean, of course, but I don't see really any deficits from this trade for Miami.
No, not at all. I don't see much for the Hornets either. I mean, you're not competing right now. I think Rozier could have been a nice piece to try to build on, to try to get into that, eventually get into the playoffs and be consistent around that, but they're not ready yet to contend. And picking up some more draft capital, I think, is very nice for the team alongside a veteran presence with Kyle Lowry to help as LaMelo Ball continues to really develop into a star player for Charlotte. And then moving on, another big trade, Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. So another Raptors, or former Raptors player, I should say, he's Raptor now, but not anymore after this trade, is dealt over to the Indiana Pacers, a Pacers team that's really taken a big step up this season, and now they have another piece at it. What's your take, Darayus?
This Pacers team, and I was, we have a podcast at WOUB Public Media in Athens called SportsBeat, and last semester on SportsBeat, I slammed my hand on the table and told all those guys, the Indiana Pacers are legit. We saw what they did in that in-season tournament to get all the way to the final, knocking off Boston and Milwaukee in the in-season tournament with and people now know who Tyrese Halliburton is. And I know he's out right now, but when he comes back, this Pacer team is going to be high-flying fun, Sedric. You've got a super fast-paced guard in Tyrese Halliburton, who, if I'm just, doesn't he lead the league in assists?
I believe
so. It's him and Trae Young are number 2, if I'm not mistaken. But he's also giving you 24 points a game. Miles Turner, 17 points per game. I think he's been, one of the most consistent players in the NBA for quite some time now. And then they've got a lot of just tenacious players. You look at Benedict Mathurin, who is an up-and-coming star. Buddy Hield, right? Gives you that veteran presence, one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And then I'm looking at a guy, former Celtics player. I watched this guy develop in Boston and really take his game to the next level now in Indiana. That's Aaron Nesmith. 11.6 points per game might not be the flashiest stat, but when you watch the Indiana Pacers play live, he does all those things that you don't see on the stat sheet, right? He's diving on the floor. I saw in the in-season tournament Aaron Nesmith taking hard balls to the ground, making tough finishes right at the basket against guys like Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Completely fearless player. And then, of course, Obi Toppin, too, is, kind of revived his, let's say revived, but I think he's his role, for sure, resurgence. And you can tell that his game fits the mold of this Pacers team. I think the Knicks, with Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, it's more guard-oriented, slower pace. But with, we saw at Dayton, Obi Toppin is fast and explosive, and that's what these Pacers are. If you had to describe the Pacers in 2 words, fast and explosive for sure. So, and I think Pascal Siakam, still a young player, great scorer. His story is awesome. Didn't grow up playing the game of basketball, and just seeing what he's been able to do. Starting the game later in his life, and now here he is. I think no reason he shouldn't be an all-star. This Pacers team, I think the Pacers could easily win a first-round series.
Yep, I could certainly see that. Yeah, Pacers right now sitting at the 7th spot in the East, and they're at 24-20 with a lot of upside going on, and I would not be surprised if they find themselves in a win streak pretty similar to the Cleveland Cavaliers at some point this season, where they win about 8 to 9 games in a row, get hot, get into that first top 6 spots to get a playoff spot. They're going to be competing, though. I think the East is now very compelling, even with these trades now in mind. Of course, the Celtics, they've been really solid. They finally lost a home game for the first time recently against the Denver Nuggets. You got the Bucks, where there's a lot of turmoil that's there, but still sitting at 30-13. 76ers, 29-13. Joel Embiid, of course, the big 70-point game. Philadelphia 76ers all-time record, passing Wilt Chamberlain there. for points in a game. Cleveland Cavaliers now, with them being red hot, 26-15, just a half a game above the Knicks, who are 27-17, Heat 24-19, Pacers 24-20, Orlando Magic starting to regress a little bit to the mean. Young team, still a lot of upside there too. I think that you give it 1 or 2 more years, they're going to certainly be in that top 6. Might not be there yet, but I think they have a good chance in the play-in, and then the rest of the play-in of the top 10, Bulls and Hawks rounded up of what's been a very entertaining Eastern Conference. So we'll see how that continues to flow.